So what happened last time we were playing Crimson Cutlass? I had gotten all the way to the mission climax, and I completed my mission and got the Fabergé Egg. However, my patron EI is missing, and I have no idea where he's at. He left me halfway through the mission. Now, it's sort of uncommon that the patron come on the mission, but in this case, he actually came, and then later on, he went to confront his brother. Now, his brother, Ivan, I met him. He appeared in the climax, which also adds more mystery to the fact of what happened to my patron. Along the way, I met three important characters. The first would be Johann Hugo, who is a reformist, and he gave me a set of pamphlets, the Psalms written in French. That pamphlet by itself could get me burned at the stake for witchcraft. I also encountered my first enemy, the Lord High Mayor Flambeau. He sent several different contingencies of guards against me, which I bested. And finally, I met the mysterious Lady Jade, who I think has an ulterior motive in these plots, but also she said to me that she's going to be the future wife of that Lord High Mayor, my enemy. And the last character I met was Gabriel from the Horse Guards. I actually took his uniform from him, and that allowed me to complete my objectives. In the climax itself, I tried to first enter through B and C to get into this fortress, the Summer Palace. Found out I couldn't go through D. I set up a diversion, which took me all the way down to H, where I finally found the ability to just walk right in. And I made it to 4, and at 4, I encountered a blind major who was retired there, and after I placated him, I crossed the Great Hall at 3 and made it to the climax itself in the center at X. There I got the Fabergé Egg. Now I continue to play Henri, and Henri is a gentleman, very impoverished, and he's also someone who has 3 swaggering techniques. Now, if you watch some of the last videos, you notice that I forgot to check that I picked up charismatic style, but I just added it in post. But you'll see that I have a fresh character sheet here. I made my way down the trellis to the river, where transport was waiting. Sometimes henchmen act without needless instruction. Good man. I jumped aboard a flatboat and was handed a winter cloak. The last thing I needed was for someone to recognize the horse guard uniform. That raiment had served its purpose. If we got stopped, I could lift the cloak and claim to be a representative on secret dispatch of the king. Yet the few onlookers we passed saw us only as workers. When I asked where my man came by the raft, he said he was paid to bring it downriver. I chuckled at the serendipity. We were actually employed, earning an honest wage of a few pennies as gondoliers. The effort was soothing, plunging the pole into the water and forcing my weight against the river bottom. The barge accelerated with the current. In a few days, we had reached the northern ocean shores. So the epilogue that we go into will use the same encounter flow chart. We'll have kings, queens, knight, knaves, and 10s. A 10 would get us home. I also use the double face card rule in the epilogue. Sometimes I use it in phases when we've had phases go on for a long time, especially phase B could go on 20 cards, which is a couple hours of play. And a couple hours you may be enjoying, a couple hours you may want to move past, because the real action, of course, we all know is happening in the climax to any adventure. That's when you can complete your mission criteria. But if we get that face card, if I get 2 of them, I'll probably bring us home. I may even bring us home with a queen event. And otherwise, a phase A, B, or C, no, this is the epilogue. So none of the other cards in the game are going to be mission consequence, but we'll probably see a number of personal events on the way home. Those are a good way of checking off encounters, ignobles, and you can also see campaign events or mission inconsequence encounters, which are not inconsequential to the mission. They just mean they were not caused by the mission. They would have happened no matter what mission you're on. We're still going through a Reformation-style campaign here, where I'm going to see the medieval Church of France make it all the way to some sort of either Reformed or counter-Reformed church at the end. And here's my character, Henri, back to him. I'm still wounded. Once I complete the epilogue, that wound will go away. Do I still have immunity? Well, I do have the mission. I flipped that initial death card that told me I cannot die in this mission, which means a lot of bad digressions could come my way. We'll find out as we go along how much I'll stringently enforce that. I don't necessarily want to kill the character, but I want to keep honest to the game, and I'm going to run these scenarios and these adventures probably until Henri meets his end or reaches level 8 as a swashbuckler. We're on the Olde World map. Now, to get home, I can either choose King's Highway to Marseille, but that probably would not get me that final check of the Ignoble that I want here. I'm really looking for a ship engagement, mutiny, or actions at sea. And to get that final check, I'm going to really need to go to sea. But luckily, I have that option. These gray lines on my campaign map, excuse me, the campaign map actually represent border rivers. So I can take a barge traffic all the way to the Sea of Brussels here and then finish the trip either by charter or along the King's Highway, but I'm going to take sea lanes to get home. And when I finally reach, I'll probably get a transport in Ghent. I could not converse with the longshoremen of Ghent. They stepped aboard the barge and grunted for us to get off. The farm parcels were quickly unloaded. I and my companion took our few coins graciously. We separated, vowing to meet again back in France. I handed my companion 2 fine flintlocks and took from him his clunky wheel-lock firearm, which was faulty and little more use than a club. He was going to follow the coast, while I asked around about transport to Marseille. Sailors tend to know sailors. Captain Ruse spoke French and welcomed me into his crew, a working passage. His manner seemed sentimental. Strangely, he embraced me to seal the deal instead of extending a hand. His eyes were mere slits, a face sunburnt red as wine. Ruse had spent more lifetime on the water than on land. I joined his crew as third helmsman. I would claim the worst watch, overnight, with the majority of the crew asleep and not asking questions. Ruse answered, "Suit yourself," yet I sensed he was pleased. Why, though? By my choice or something else? A lot of the stuff can be hand-waved. We don't worry about the equipment lists in Crimson Cutlass, only the important items like the Fabergé Egg I'm carrying in my bag, or items that are specifically tied to other events that happen. Like if I flipped a card in combat that said I no longer have a sword, I would write that down so that if I get another encounter that says I'm specifically using my sword, I would know I'd have to have either missed that roll outright or have some sort of negative modifier as I had to wrestle the sword of another character in the game away. I made an ostentatious show of a longsword and rusty wheel lock, using one or both at times to point instructions to the midnight ship hands. The blade glinted in the moonlight. It was pretty. The pistol, a mere prop, remained unloaded. After my shift, the arms master approached and asked that I check these weapons in with him. I was an outsider, an unknown. I courteously agreed, by design. The blade was dangerous. I doubt the pistol would even fire. My working palm gun I could easily hide and retain on my person. I put my sword on a peg and dropped the oversized pistol on the floor in a short vault below deck within the ship's bowels. On the gun I folded a leather bag. The armsman assumed it was just shot and powder for the antique. He told me with a smirk that I should toss it overboard. I told him how my father hit 2 German dragoons at 100 paces. That's kept for luck. He smiled. C'est la vie. My true aim was to secure a place for the prize. The Fabergé Egg was fragile, and my work at the wheel took effort. I already worried and clutched the leather bag too conspicuously. Now it was just left on the deck in the arms locker. There was a thief. I know not if he was also Adam's man or an agent of the crown, or by that matter the mayor. What I did know was he would try to break into the arms locker. Maybe he wanted to reveal my deception. Maybe he felt he could hide the bag elsewhere. I caught a glimpse of him and decided to follow. Very cinematic, very freeform. That's what we're doing. So I'm going to head down the river by barge using sea lanes. And here comes our first flip of the game. We love the first flip of the game. And I will be recording this like before on 2 different machines. You'll hear a little bit of fidelity difference between the 2 machines as I use them. And also on the record machine, I frequently stop and start. So on the there's always an editing process at the end to match up and try to make this as entertaining for you in the home audience as they are for me to play and as they are for me to see at the very end. First encounter, a death encounter. Well, isn't that special? Let's see what that death says. It says, until the phase advances or the deck reshuffles, the mission inconsequent encounters will tend to have unfavorable or violent reactions. the ref may prompt combat with people that normally would not get involved. And I'm going to go ahead and fiat this right now with my character, because I need a ship engagement, mutiny, or actions at sea. So I am on sort of a river barge, and at Ghent, I transferred from river barge into like a normal transport cog. And somebody in the crew is aware that I have the Fabergé Egg. Probably they were an agent either of the rival, a Dom, or they are a man who encountered me in all my duels with the Lord High Mayor, or somebody just knows that there's a reward being offered. And I'm not going to fight individual fighting duels here. I've already had that. But I'm going to fight a mutiny action. And I'm going to go ahead and use that mutiny action where I'm going to use Repulsing. So I go into the rules and I grab the Repulsing table here. And I will not add a modifier either way, defensive modifier. But I'm going to flip a card for Repulsing. And when I flip that card for Repulsing, I'm going to go ahead and generate where I'm looking for optional success and ship separate. So I'm going to count that as optional success and the mutiny ends. Now, this doesn't have to be a full-blown mutiny. This can be a staged one where I only got a small encounter where I catch somebody trying to break into the arms locker to arm himself with pistols and sword to attack me. And of course, I'm a spy, so I probably have hidden on me, not at my boot this time, but on me a dagger of some sort that hasn't been blunted and a pistol. But let's see what the encounter for Repulsing, second card flip, here it comes, and it's a 10. So I read out the 10. I'm going to dupe the opponent into reserving a force to defend against an imagined counterattack while your own crew cuts your ship free. Success and ship separate determine aftermath. If the player character has the skills Armorer, Shipwright, Crossbowman, or Men-at-Arms, difficulty reduces by 1 for each. I don't have any of those, but the advantage is cunning, and I'm a cunning man. I'm going to roll 3 dice, looking for a 13 in order to end this duel. And then I can imagine it's the fact that I'm catching this guy breaking in the arms locker. I'm armed. He probably has a club, blame pin, maybe has a hunk of net. But I'm going to go ahead and do the old look behind you and see what's there. And here comes my roll. And it's 3 dice, looking for a 13. And wow, that is a beautiful roll. That's a beautiful roll for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a very high roll. It may be the best roll I've ever made. No, I've been playing too long to think that's the best roll I've ever made. But what it does do for me is it allows me to success and ship separate, or success, and I brought the duty commander in probably, let me take a look at my ship and company really quick here. I brought in the pilot or the master of the sails, or the master of the arms, the intendant, the quartermaster, the master of the guns. I brought somebody involved of the NPC crew in here to help me catch this guy, and I'll turn him over to justice over there. I surrendered the thief to the duty watch. The voleur started to accuse, but he was the person with oil-stained hands from trying to slip open the lock with a file shaving. An example was made, which favored my circumstances. He would be keeled-hauled for piracy. That master tied his arms and tossed him overboard. The thief was dragged under the vessel and cut unmercifully by the barnacles attached to the hull. He emerged on the far side breathing but unconscious. He would not return to duty and died a couple of days later. I wondered again who he might be, as he was wrapped in his weighted sailcloth and tossed into the sea, but I did not investigate and draw further suspicion. With a full purse of coins, something I didn't have, I might have bought myself a berth. I was on a working passage. Now, should I move the egg? Do I place such fragile element in the rocking ballast? Hide it in the galley under flour? Submerge all in a rain barrel? I might just confide in the captain and have him hold the parcel safely. I decided against all of these. The best thing to do was just leave it where it was in the arms locker, next to the other powder horns and sundry personal items of the other crewmen. Hope that doesn't bite me, where I lose my prize so close to the end. Should we ever clash ships, I'd be the first in line to be armed, besides my work knife and palm pistol. But I'm going to take this little thing here, and I'm going to cross this here, and I'm still injured. Maybe I'm not really a stout man, not that mattered, but what it does is allow me to get to level 1. I've gone from level 0 to level 1.
I can say level 1, I can mark that right here, and I have 1 make roll now. Now that make roll allows me to, instead of making any roll by rolling dice, I can roll and I can say I pass the roll, but instead I make the roll and turn it automatically successful. 3 swaggering, all of my first 0 level ignobles checked, and I'm still continuing the game. Now I just want to get home, but I still got all that violent travel that's going on here as I'm in the Sea of Brussels in the sea lane, just trying in the Epilog to get to Marseille. That 10, good chance I'm going to get a personal event here. Let's see what I got here, an 8. Now, when I go over to the encounter table here, I can look. Is it the King, Queen, Knight, and Ace are 10? No, it's not. Is it in phase? No, I think we talked about this. The Epilog doesn't have any cards in phase, any of the minor cards, non-phase cards. But is the previous card a 10? Yes, it is, so it's a personal event.
I lurched awake, a fever. I was dreaming of shooting a noble double-barrel discharge, point-blank range. That and embracing a lass. I sat up, noticeably aroused, embarrassed. 2 men playing cards looked on at my startled gasp. I mimed a wipe of the brow, a close call. They smiled and went back to playing Black Lady for peppercorns. I would later wonder if I was feeling guilt of some sort. I reflected on my recent past. Was I too eager to follow EI? Did he, the Russian, lead me into a criminal life? No, of course not. I was a rapscallion from birth. My patron, Ethan, was a man of full life, someone worth emulating. It was not in my nature to look astern at the parting of the sea. Maybe I'd go find the priest aboard. I could spend a Sunday at confession.
Now, personal events, there are whole sections in the book on generating personal events, but I can also go to my automation on this, and I can pick an Olde World ship, and it says that I have wondered if I should take stock of my life and my choices. I am carrying a very, very valuable item. If I were to sell it, even for a small amount of money, I could probably book passage to a colony. And if I don't live like a king there, and I probably wouldn't, but I would at least have a new life away. But I do like the sea, even though we're playing more of a Reformation-style character campaign. All of these characters are built in the swashbuckling mode. That's why most of the character skills that you see on the sheet here relate to life on the sea. I happen to be actually a captain and pilot, which is probably how I got my travel out of Ghent. But I'm going to wonder if I should take stock. Now, usually the way I frame these personal events when I play is the fact that I give the players a question and then I ask them, would you do that or not? So do you wonder if you should take stock of your life and your choices? And if you accept that or decline that. And I would say that I'm probably not going to accept that. I'm not going to take stock of my life. I've completed a mission for a patron, a guy that I admired in some ways. I knew he was a little bit crazy, but I admired him. But I can make a nearly impossible roll here. Nearly impossible roll. I think a nearly impossible roll would be a very hard roll for me to make. Let me pull up my chart here. A nearly impossible roll is a 16 at my level. So if I roll perfect dice here, I get what I call a pirate's hunch. And I did not get a pirate's hunch, but I stick by my guns here and say that no, I'm not going to take stock of my life.
I stood in line for my turn with the priest, waiting with the other Catholics. A few reformers in the sails jeered. The Dutch were more tolerant than most. Some might say they were liberally minded, some would say they were all bound for hell. Something nagged at me, not guilt, but the tug of a guardian angel. My instincts said to remain cocksure. I straightened up and just stepped right out of line. I may have grumbled this was taking too long. I may have scoffed outright at my previous desire for a washed slate. No confessing for me, not even mourning wood. The sailors above, seeing me turn my back, cheered. Was I joining them in damnation? In truth, the affair was too open. It was typical for a ship priest to give a report to the captain. It prevented mutiny. Then there was Longface Jan, the second pilot who worked the wheel in the afternoons. He took scathing notice, a zealot ending his shift with prayer, scolding me for not joining him, making me think the lives of all were at risk by refusing. I would feign I was tired. Next time I'd join him. Each day so far I refused. Had little to do with piety and everything to do with the cruelty towards Sander, the hourglass turner. For a man who sought life through Jesus, he certainly did not know the Beatitudes. Blessed are the merciful. A second late in the task and that ship boy would have a bruised ear. That brought back memories and later restless dreams of when I learned my trade.
Now, when I generated these, I think I used Excel to generate these just with some macros. I just wrote out a number of different scenarios that I thought could appear and broke them into, you don't want to hear all that, the life of somebody who writes code. And it says that only for yes are you accused of a capital offense. So I actually guessed correctly. Now, was I peeking over my shoulder to see that? No, I was actually role-playing that I would not, as a man who's cunning and dashing, who's just captured a Fabergé egg, who just went to level 1. He would not be questioning his life here. And so no was the appropriate answer. And only on yes would have my question in my life make me do something like confess to the crimes I'm committing. No, oh my gosh, can you imagine how bad that would be? To most of the crews in a Cutlass game would be semi-pirate to begin with. They're kept in order by a brutality in this age. I would not want to confess that I have an extremely valuable item that I'm sorry that I have. Plus, I got that pamphlet given me by Johann of the Psalms in the French language. Wow, the religious zealots and the thieves would have just cut me to ribbons. So good guess on my part here. Now, I can check an ignoble of personal growth from this, in that the fact that I can say, I am not a man who questions my actions. Am I a fatalist and trust God with all these actions? Perhaps. Maybe I'm moving a more Calvinist bent. Or maybe I'm just a person who just is too stupid to know that I should be questioning myself. But I will be someone who does not question my actions.
Long-faced Jan told me about his philosophy as a fatalist. Everything was controlled by God. I goaded him and asked about evil. Was evil the work of God? He began to answer, but then left the debate sneering. I'm not a man who questions my action. I perhaps could be a fatalist. Perhaps. I think more, I'm too thick to look backward. No good ever comes from questioning anyone's action, especially mine. I knew the ship would set in at Nice, barely a place of any register, yet I was off duty. I asked Captain Ruse to help oversee the small cargo exchange ashore. He nodded consent, barely a word he ever spoke. The crew was mostly adding casks of salt meat. I left my duty to another and took an hour in diversion. If I was left behind, at least I was back in France. Could be rather shameful, but sometimes a man needs a good hump in an alley, outside a pub, whenever possible, with someone he will never see again in his life. Such is the encounter of two ships passing in a storm, or some other poetic cover for crassness. I came across the typical alley cat, one purring and seeking company. Score 1 in my hunt for distraction of an animal intent. Ever the pie man. First, I see your penny. I had brought a pair, one for dalliance and t'other for a beverage either before or after any conquest. I took her in my arms, yet shied from kissing her. The teeth of the lass were frightful. Wait, she wasn't French. I knew because she was chomping on Gouda. Each country favors its own du fromage. We French enjoy a vibrant cheese. Gouda, being rather bland, is just too sweet. I hear tell that the sweeter the milk, the more the decay. This wench was proof of that. I decided to show her just how we French water a field as passion grew. I should have been asking for the penny. Ha! I was almost ready to consummate when she broke wind, right up my nostrils. To think I fretted about her teeth being unpleasant. Here, take the penny, I'm done and done. I wandered off blinking, rubbing my eyes and spitting. Wine, ale, English warm beer. I should have saved both coins instead of for a bath. It occurred to me that the fatalist god certainly had a dry sense of humor. I crossed myself when I finally got that frothy drink.
But I did check another ignoble for that. And we're going to go into another clip of the game. And here comes a card. And it's a justice card. And what does that justice card tell me? It tells me that until the deck reshuffles, ignore knaves and treat them as 10s. It's a good card. So a 10 from either flipping a 10 or flipping a knave, and I'm going to get home.
I was worried still that another agent was in the crew. I did not check on my parcel as not to raise suspicion. The arms master nodded as I passed. Technically, I too was a master, though of no true name status and without expectation of inflicting discipline. Long-Face Jan took care of that all by himself on the scarlet speckled quarterdeck. How to find an agent of nefarious nature? There was no instruction manual. I decided to simply ask people where they were from. I told jokes and judged the way they laughed. Someone watching might reveal something by mistake or by fear. I certainly might, and I was fully trained by the clergy and my hometown dockmaster Lucas. Making jokes also helped take my mind off the cargo I entrusted out of sight. Someone turned the conversation around. Who are you? Well, who am I? Sir, I'm a fine sailor from Brighton. One with a wench that's a tight one. She said, "'Pon my soul, you're in the wrong hole," with plenty of room in the right one. Everyone seemed to laugh, except Long-Face Jan. Fug. Thought he was on duty or outside. What time was it? Either he or I should be asleep.
And I'm hopeful that as I break these, I'll play about an hour and a half, and I'll break it into 3 episodes for the internet. As I play in each set, hopefully I'm going to get all the way to the through the Minister's Affairs here before I cut the video off. But we'll see. The epilogue could be quite involved. As I said, some of these encounters might go 10, 20 encounters. But I am flipped that justice card, but I am now ignoring knaves and treating them as 10s. And here comes the next flip. And I got myself a 6. Now, is the 6 in phase? No, the 6 is not in phase. What was the last card I flipped? And my memory is never good for this, so I'm going to have to go back a little bit. And it was an 8. So I got an 8 of cups and a 6 of rods. So I'm going to take the high card, subtract the low card, because it wasn't the same ring for a campaign event. It's not a knave, queen, knight, or knave for a personal event. So I'm going to have a mission Inconsequence card. So I got a cup and a rod is the combination, cup, rod, and it's an encounter number 2. So when I go into sea lanes and read cup, rod, a special vessel has come over on the horizon here as we move from in the Sea of Brussels from Ghent to Marseille to end this mission. And a 2 is a convoy. Now, in this case, I'm not the captain of the vessel that would decide to attack, nor would I really want to attack as a convoy. I'm more going to make just a general note that a convoy has been moving. I can make something up that there's a convoy that has come all the way from Liechtenstein with a delegation to meet with men in Carpathia, about the way they've treated the Abbey in Belgrade. Again, it's all stuff that if I was developing on the fly, I could move right in a mission in that direction. And when I generate my next mission, it may be related to this convoy, but not everything you do in the game should result for a saving throw. God, I hate saving throws. It can result in your death. So I'm just going to mark this as something that's more informational, and then we're going to go on.
The first ship sighted turned into several. Before any flag came into view, the count was up to 30. Captain Ruse was a rock, even as the drummer sounded general quarters. The arms were just not yet distributed. Captain Ruse told his masters to stand ready, but not arm his crew. Not yet. All told, 40 ships were moving in convoy. Someone was going to war. That or a treasure was being moved. I wondered how many warships King Alexander might have sent if my Fabergé Egg was being diplomatically returned to Russia. A swift caravel came alongside. Ruse welcomed aboard an officer of the Vatican. I was told his rank was friar. I wish I spoke more languages. I was ready to pretend ability and offer my services as interpreter, even knowing that I would get lashed. I found out later as much as I could without seeming involved. I worried this group was after me, but that was absurd, even paranoid. The convoy was a mix of Russian and Serbian ships, crews and vessels, some of ruinous shape. Neither place was known for a navy, unlike Naples or the sailors of Cleef. Those lads are renowned, said to be indentured at sea at the age of 4 until 12. I had no experience with them to truly know. Seemed a tall tale like the cavalry of Ansbach, spending at least 20 hours each day mounted, even sleeping in a saddle. The convoy was hastily assembled and had few warships, those being mostly older, slower cogs. Some had heavier cannon, yet positioned too high on the decks. I surmised most would capsize if not reconfigured before firing. Maybe these were just for land action. The force was going to burn. No secrecy. The hubris in this leader was appalling. Their destination and goal seemed a doom. France was supposedly taking no side in this war. Ports were closed. The convoy asked if we could sell anything. Captain Ruse sold all of his salted meat, tripled his investment. Did he know this group was coming? The friars said the convoy was attacked by pirates. Men aboard whispered of the Vert Volant, out of Naples. French expatriates, all outcasts, exiled by the king, flying the green flag. Sounded so exciting. It was odd. The French were supposedly taking no side in this war, and the Vert Volant were an easy political force to use, one way or the other. They worked for gold. Long-faced Jan suggested we should join the Holy Crusade. Oh gosh, I disagreed. Not our fight. Crusades were miserable. Ruse remained bound for Marseille. He had secured enough, perhaps, to retire.
Now I can pull out a number of charts here, and I can make rolls either to find out if I need to double talk an assembly, if they decide, and that would happen more if I had, for instance, that special vessel was a patrol ship that was looking for a cargo search or was trying to come on our board and trying to take sailors off. But this encounter, again, special vessel convoy, more informational, and I'm going to flip another card. And we get the Empress. Now with the Empress is going to be, until the deck reshuffle, the player ignores the effect of all Major Tarot. So now I'm not going to even see Major Tarot coming out.
The sky was clear and the weather getting warmer. Spring was finally here and the snow on the road to Paris forgotten. We were still in calm, so I asked permission to have a swim. That Dutch tart stink-ridden taint never fully abated. Captain Ruse agreed, but asked I stay close to the ship. This was the Bay of Brussels. We needed to be gone at any moment. I did not ask him how anyone could approach when there was no wind. Having yet to see a galley myself in my travels, I could not envision into the wind maneuvering. The captain seemed to eye me as I disrobed to bear all. Some of the hands joined me in joyous frolic. I even lent an arm to Sandler, the hourglass turner who could not yet swim. He would soon master this craft, a necessary survival tool, something every sailor should know. Join us, Jan, jump in. Oh, what a sourpuss. The man must have dined on lemons. Well, no fair wind lasts at sea. I surmised he was not a swimmer and was not going to be bested by the subordinate he boxed to feel superior. The next few days I settled back into a pattern of comparing my abilities to Jan. It was just macho upsmanship. Couldn't help myself. Every time I felt I had a skill that Longface did not, I gloated. I used every word on my vocabulary on our shift changes. He taught me many a word in Dutch, at least the cuss words. Not so holier than thou, me hearty. I quoted a few psalms in French from memory. Perhaps that was a mistake.
See if we can flip a few cards fast and get us home. And we get the 6. And now that 6, was that last a 6-6? Wow, that's a campaign event. Now it's becoming more interesting. The 6 of rods, the Empress, the 6 of coins. You don't look at the Major Tarot. You look at the last card that was of the minor set. That would be a 6. A 6 and a 6 is going to be a campaign event. Now let me look that up. So I go into my second book here. Special events, we have a pair of 6s. 6s represent discovery, trade routes, new world colonies, new industries, or cartels. Wow. I'm going to call it a cartel. So we got ourselves a campaign event, as I scratch some notes, of a double 6. We have a new cartel. Now I already had established in my notes using book 4 of Cutlass the different types of cartels in the game. There's a wool cartel and a wine cartel. There's got to be somebody in the old world that has a forest with big enough mass to actually make decent traveling and sailing ships, and that monopoly on a lot of these things can disappear once the new world is established. So I said wool and wine. Gold is not a cartel. Gold is something that you seek, and usually the old world is starved for gold, as Europe was. But once the New World was discovered, there was so much gold and silver that came in that all of these nobles that just were sitting on such a small amount of wealth, thinking that they were fabulously wealthy, they found themselves impoverished as inflation took over.
I was looking about the cargo under the excuse of helping shift weight. I wanted to see if there was a better place to stash my prize. There wasn't. I did manage to see my pouch through the open door when the master of the Marines asked for a change of firearm. I held my breath. There was no shenanigans. I expected the arms master to at least show the sergeant major my wheel lock, but he was a consummate professional toward his charge. I knew the egg was safe, short of the ship sinking. Wool. Ruse had wool concealed in crates, not loose bolts of cloth. I had seen this in Marseille working for the dockmaster Lucas, and now it seemed like our master, Ruse, was smuggling. Wool was heavily taxed to prevent imports. The English sold most of the world's wool, and a strong England was bad for France. The emblems on the crates were Carpathian. That didn't seem right. Wasn't the convoy earlier also heading to Carpathia? The world was spinning and the kings were plotting, but behind it all, several cabals ran all of the business. That's what Dockmaster Lucas taught me. Another crewman confirmed my suspicions. He said his father in Carpathia had been threatened. His sheep were impounded falsely. I don't know the law, but I do know wool is only valuable because it is kept scarce. Any field can raise sheep. There could be profit in blackmailing Ruse, exposing him at port. Oh, now, one mission at a time. Ruse would be ready armed, and I would gain little if things escalated. I was near done with my work for the Russian. There was no need for my focus to stray.
Well, we got a pair of sixes for a new cartel. Again, it's another thing like that Convoy. Are the two related? If I'm clever, I can weave a story between the two of them, and maybe I'll do that. Shall we move on? Another flip. The Wheel of Fortune. Whenever you get the wheel, you reshuffle the deck.
Captain Ruse paid me a compliment right at the helmsman handoff, not as I was leaving, but as I was arriving from my watch. He said he observed how the crew worked under my charge. The men admire you. You have a career ahead of you at sea. Ruse asked Jan to stay on and enjoined me to have a glass of wine in his cabin. I accepted and tried not to be suspicious. My pistol was primed and I could swim to shore, diving out the rear gallery if need be. Yet I did not have the egg. Damn it. I fidgeted as I entered his cabin. I expected him to hold forth the egg and accused, "What is this?" Instead he poured. I had not to worry. He sliced a piece of blue cheese and told me to uncock my pistol. A shrewd man, seeing what others don't. The elderly man was looking for a first mate, not to accuse. I exhaled. I could not accept the promotion. Ruse took my unease as suggesting informal bunk company. He said outright he was not inclined toward the physical. He never nurtured that taste. When he started, he was a slaver working for the Spanish. As a younger sailor and later master, he always voyaged with a belly warmer. Now near retirement, his days of casual trysts were done. I was expecting an ambush and was confused by his redirection and candor. Yet it made sense. Two people confused by the unsaid. He just wanted to share wine with a fellow voyager. He said I reminded him of northern French nobility, the near straight incline of my nose and receding hairline at such a young age. I accepted the compliment, yet wondering when the last time was that I actually looked in a mirror and shaved. I did not know my father, but one of my mother's more affectionate patrons could be Dad. Why else would she take upon herself that irksome 9 months long business of gestation, the painful and often fatal process of expelling a fetus, and the worrisome and care-ridden task of raising a child? Yes, she had graduated from street squalor to house trollop to near courtesan over a long career, and she still entertains certain members with affection, even as she had some newfound luxury of choosing her own clients. Now, was that glamour, or was that a resignation of becoming a madam to younger strays? I sipped, ever the optimist. Was this the moment to blackmail Ruse over the wool? I smiled and dismissed my errant thoughts. Ruse asked me what prompted my sudden contentment. "The sea," was my reply. He nodded. I returned to duty, replacing long-faced Jan, hardly one to be impressed. Was Jan jealous of my return? I was not so late. There was another 10 minutes before my turn on steering. I typically arrive early to saunter or provocate. Jan had to endure my delay till the last second. I stood over the hourglass as the sand slipped out. I looking away, making light of a whole affair I hinted at with a ruse, then reaching in, I turned the glass as the last grain fell. A jig followed that made the young glass turner smile. The bully Jan left, beyond incensed.
A knight. Now this is a knight, but it's an inverted knight. Now it's going to be somebody opposed to the quest, or at least somebody antagonistic toward me. And let's say that this floating NPC character comes to me and says, I got off course, you made a mistake. Well, if I did, I apologize. I don't need to get in a fight right here. And this is where I'll actually use a reaction table. So I'm going to go back to one of those reaction tables where, am I going to flattery and banter him? Well, I could, because I do have repartee. So I'm going to use flattery and banter to him and say that, would you mind? I'll use the last coin in my purse. Oh, no. I'm going to give you this nice orange top coat leather that you may know the quality from. I'm going to give you my nice leather top coat. I don't want to be traveling with that King's Horse Guard's coat for much longer. I want to shed this disguise pretty quick. I'll give you that, and I'll give you my hat. If you just show me how you use the techniques of the sextants and how you do your map scribing. And, he might be flattered by that. I can call that an ordinary roll of a 7 to get by here. Or I could flip a card saying I'm using flattery. Let's flip a card. And you're using flattery and banter. And here comes the card. It's a back-to-back Wheels of Fortune. That does not happen often.
Long-faced Jan was in a snit. He accused me of getting off course. The nights were frequently calm, and I sometimes allowed the currents to shift us. The ocean moved west to east toward Marseille. I was within my right. The morning pilot said nothing, but the two may have become clucking hens on their handoff. I felt I'd make a peace offering. My orange jacket was well made and warm. I offered Jan that and my hat. I thought he had admired both, and I was right. I shed the last of the Horse Guard's uniform. This orange coat fits you better. You have the late sun and need the shade. A gift between shipmates. I still kept my comfortable shoes. Long-faced Jan seemed to relax some. Maybe he hated nobles. All he had to do was ask, and I would have dispelled that assumption. I prayed with him a few times. He was okay. All men are your friends until you give them reason to be otherwise. I would soon give him reason. Mine was a contrary nature.
I can shuffle that deck as easy as that flip. All it means is that the last card played, by my heuristic, has become Ace of Cups.
Well, I went over time, so until next week, more later.